Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Music is a Journey. My name is Peter. Today I am jumping on a thread, as we like to say, and this is a thread that was created by Vinyl Stockholm. Now, I saw Jakob over in Denmark on the channel which has now disappeared apparently, but he responded to this thread and I saw his video first. I thought it was a cool idea, so I went over to check Vinyl Stockholm, and the idea is to show 5 records in one way or another that have some theme related to UFOs, aliens, and space trips, so it said. So I will leave a link to his video in the description of this one because his channel still exists. Jakob, is this not the 3rd time you've vanished? Please come back. Anyway, so let's get on with it then. I decided to do this, well, okay, there are 2 changes. One, I believe the original video calls for vinyl. If you know my channel, you know I don't have very much of that, but I do have loads of music. So I'm going to share my contribution on CD. Because the CD images are rather small, I'm going to put an enlarged image over here. The second thing is that I decided to do it where I'm going to choose a band name related to UFOs, an album title, an album cover, an album concept, and a song. So let's see here. Here we go. First of all, for a band's name that is related to UFOs, aliens, and space trips, this is a band called Allagash from Newfoundland in Canada. It's a metal band. They take their name Allagash from a place in Maine, and I believe the story goes back in the mid-70s sometime. There was a claim of alien abduction and remains found of some strange metal which didn't seem to be of earthly origin. And in fact, on this album, there is a part in one song where they're actually playing back the spoken voice of somebody who is telling the story, and he's saying,
"This happened. If you believe it, that's all right. If you don't believe it, I don't care."
So Allagash actually have the name Allagash because the band's whole concept is about alien visitation, UFOs, abductions, and all that kind of thing. And their album cover here shows some prehistoric people in a cave with some alien visitors approaching at the entrance, enlarged version here. I think they have 2, possibly 3 albums out, and as far as I know anyway, all of the albums and all of the songs, or most of the songs anyway, are related to this topic. So that's Allagash for a band whose name is related to UFOs, aliens, and space trips. Secondly, we're going with an album title, and this is Alien by Strapping Young Lad, which is the band that Devin Townsend was in for a few albums there, back from the late 90s to the early 2000s. This album here, Alien, is an interesting one because for a while in the late 90s, early 2000s, Devin Townsend was having this feeling like he was going crazy and he saw everybody like just talking pink meat. And he went to get some psychiatric help, and they said, well, it looks like you have something like bipolar disorder, so you're going to have to take some medicine to help you out with that. So he took that medicine, and then for this album here, he decided, let's try to write an album where I'm off my medication. So this is a very wild and chaotic and crazy album, and it's called Alien. There are different versions of the cover art I've seen out there, but I really like this one, so enlarged version here for your viewing pleasure. Next up is an album cover that has something to do with UFOs, aliens, and space trips. There are numerous ones I considered choosing, but when I looked at my shelf behind me here, I thought, why not choose one of my favorite albums, probably of all time, and that is Voivod's 3rd album, Killing Technology, with this album cover here. The Voivod character has gone into space. A couple of songs on here are also related to space, and as you can see in his crazy device there in space, he is now targeting a planet, possibly for destruction. Anyway, that is Voivod's 3rd album. I think it's my favorite Voivod album and one of my favorite albums, and there is an image showing something about space. Next up is a concept album. I had in mind a few of these, but I looked at the shelf behind me and I just so happened to have the Moody Blues back here. And my favorite Moody Blues album is To Our Children's Children's Children. I had this on cassette back in the late 80s, and the Moody Blues, along with Pink Floyd and the Alan Parsons Project, were the first three bands where I really ventured out of the hard rock and heavy metal and proto-metal and all that kind of thing stuff that I was listening to. The first step, I think, was Pink Floyd, because they still had some songs that were a bit heavy, particularly the Nile song, one of my favorites. And then after that, you know, Alan Parsons Project and Moody Blues, a little bit softer. And this was, and still is, my favorite Moody Blues album. So this is, again, this is the whole concept of humans getting out and exploring space. And this was also released, I think, in 1969. So just there around about the moon landing and all the Apollo missions and all that. So yeah, pretty much every track on here has something to do with space. And finally, a song that has something to do with space. And so here is from Japan's, one of Japan's heavy metal bands, Ningen Isu, whom I have their entire collection back over here. There is a song on this album, this goes back to, what is it, 2003 now. There is a song on here called Yakan Hiko, which means nighttime flight. And what I love about this song is there is a killer theremin solo in this song. Now, Ningen Isu have used the theremin on a number of their songs, usually the ones related to space themes. But this one here is my favorite because they really let it rip. This is such a killer theremin solo. Now, just a little bit of curious background story here. One of the lead singers, also the guitarist and the principal songwriter here, Mr. Wajima Shinji, or Shinji Wajima for you Western folks, he claims that when he was in high school, he was possibly abducted, taken aboard a UFO. And his story goes, I have his book over here, and I think I read about it in that book there. His story goes that he was really interested in UFOs, and a friend of his had lent him a book about UFOs, and he'd been spending a lot of time reading that book, studying the photos and so on. And one night he was studying for exams and staying up really late. And then he looked out of his bedroom window and he saw lights outside, and the lights were getting brighter and brighter. And then he went to the window and looked, and he could clearly see one of those classic UFO shapes. And the lights just came closer, and then suddenly they were in his room. After that, he didn't remember anything, but he later on awoke to find himself asleep at his desk with his, head on the desk. And when he looked at the clock, it was 2 hours later. So, my gosh, like abductees, they often claim there's this time loss, right? So he claims he had 2 hours time loss. He doesn't know what happened or where it went, but he's pretty sure that he was taken aboard a UFO. I have a theory. I have an hypothesis. I have an idea. What I think really happened. What I think happened was that So, I don't know. But he seems to really believe that story, and I'm not going to challenge him on it because it's led to quite a few very good Ningen Isu songs. So that's it there. That is my contribution to this thread about UFOs, aliens, and space trips. I hope I did all right, even though I showed CDs. Thank you very much for watching. See you in another video soon. Take care all. Bye.